Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Footy with Fletch podcast. I'm Fletch Fraser. And today's special guest is the fantastic Paul Roos. He is also affectionately known as Roosy. So let's go through some of Paul Roos's highlights. He was his original team as a junior was at Beverly Hills. He played 269 games at Fitzroy, kicking 270 goals. He played 87 games at Sydney, kicking 19 goals. He played a total of 356 games, kicking 289 goals. He played in the Victorian team for 14 games, representing Victoria. His career highlights include the Lee Matthews Trophy in 1986, the Fitzroy captaincy from 1988 to 1990, and from 1992 to 1994. He was a 5-time Mitchell Medal winner. He was the Fitzroy leading goal kicker in 1990, which was very much surprising. He was a 7-time All-Australian in 1985, 1987, 1988, 1991, 1992, 1996 and 1997. He was a 2-time All-Australian captain in 1991 and 1992. He was a 2-time VFL Team of the Year in 1986 and 1987. He's in the Australian Football Hall of Fame, the Fitzroy Team of the Century in the centre-half back position. He is also in the Fitzroy Hall of Fame. He has had 2 E.J. Whittam medals and the Victorian captaincy as well. So now let's go to his coaching career. He's coached 268 games, 202 at the Swans, with a win-loss record of 116 wins, 84 losses and 2 draws. However, at the Melbourne Football Club, he coached them for 66 games with a win record of 21, 45 and 0. So there you have it. Paul Roos also won the Premiership in 2005 and was the All-Australian team coach in 2005. So that was a great achievement for Paul Roos. He grew up in Donvale and played junior football with the Beverly Hills Football Club, who later in the interview you will find out some other fantastic players that got drafted and picked up from Beverly Hills. So thank you. Let's get into the podcast. Hello, Paul.
How are you, mate? Thanks for having me. You going well?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Nah, thanks, mate. It's exciting. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So how did you find growing up in the eastern suburb of Donvale?
Yeah, mate, I was really lucky when I look back on it. It was a sort of new development area with a lot of orchards, and it was a fair way out of Melbourne back then. But the great thing about it, there's so many new sporting facilities and venues. I was a member of the Donvale Tennis Club at an early age, and then I joined the Beverly Hills Footy Club and went to the Nunawading Vikings Basketball Club and Nunawading Spectres rep team, and started at Donvale Primary School, which is a pretty new school, and then Donvale High School. So it's a great area to live, really safe, out on my bike all the time, riding around to mates' places, spending a lot of time outdoors, and yeah, no doubt it contributed to my my footy skills and the fact that I was outside all the time, and it certainly contributed to my ability to get to Fitzroy and playing the under-19s.
Yeah, no, it's a really good area because my mum grew up in East Doncaster, so she grew up in the same area as you, and of course you played at the Beverly Hills Football Club, which is a very well-known football club for having some great football talent.
Yeah, it is. It is a good area. And Beverly Hills, I think before well, just when I was getting there, I think two players that one went to South Melbourne, Mark Browning, so he played at Beverly Hills, and then Chris Smith, who I went to play with at Fitzroy, so he was from Beverly Hills as well. And then since then, I think Christian Petrarca, Mark Murphy, there's quite a few other guys as well, and even Ben Simmons, who is in the NBA, obviously playing over for the Philadelphia 76ers. So he played at the Beverly Hills Footy Club as well. So, yeah, it's got a good history of producing some AFL players.
Yeah, it definitely does. So which team did you grow up supporting and who was your biggest idol?
Yeah, look, I grew up a Carlton supporter, actually. So I didn't go to the football much because I was sort of playing a lot of sport on the weekends, but I'd watch. In those days, Carlton featured a lot on the Saturday night replays, so they were on a lot. So I watched a lot of their games, mainly the one quarter they played back then. And I had Barry Armstrong's number on the jumper, so he was an early contemporary Carlton player in the 70s. And then I remember going to the 79 grand final to watch Carlton Collingwood the year before I went down to Fitzroy under 19. So I was fortunate to go to that grand final and watch the Blues win it. And it was great to sort of finish off my Carlton barracking days before I went to Fitzroy with a premiership. So that was exciting as well.
Yeah, no, Carlton are a good club. Do you still have a feeling of support for the Blues?
No, not really. It's funny. And even some of my friends who are barracked for other clubs, I think when you get involved in a football club, you have obviously your heart and soul of that club. So as soon as I went down to Fitzroy, you're just immersed in the footy club. And even a lot of my friends, once I started playing with Fitzroy, they sort of started barracking for Fitzroy because they had a link to the footy club. And then I left Fitzroy, went to Sydney, and then left Sydney, went to Melbourne. So when you're involved in the industry, you don't really support that club you supported as a kid. You're really immersed in the footy club that you're involved in at the time.
Yeah, because that is your day-to-day job. So what was a week in the life of Paul Roos like when you were a coach, player and a commentator?
Yeah, so as a player, when I first started as a player, we worked as well. So when I look back, it was a super busy week. I mean, my first job was with the AMP, and so pre-season we'd have to go down to Kerford Road in South Melbourne in the morning, so 3 mornings a week. So I'd get up really early, travel in from my home out in the eastern suburbs, train, head into AMP, which was in the city, then go back to training at the Junction Oval afterwards. So it was a really, really long day. Then I started playing at Sydney when I left Fitzroy, and I sort of was full-time then. So it was a little bit more manageable as the players are now, where you're not working, you're actually just doing your full-time job. And then when I was a coach, I was really lucky to coach in an era of full-time players. So, yeah, we basically did a proper job. So we, get into the office at sort of 7:30 and do our meetings and training. And then most days we'd sort of leave by, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, you had the ability with the computers to do your coding at home and watch a lot of games at home as well, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's changed a lot over the years from when I first started playing.
It's like you're working a 9-to-5 job, Rosie. So have you missed working in the footy industry?
You miss the camaraderie of the team, and you miss winning. Winning's great, and it's very hard to duplicate when you get a group of players together that all want to play for the same cause, and you all have high standards and you all work together. I mean, that's the essence of sort of teamwork. And when you walk off the field of battle and you've won a really hard game, that's part of it you miss. There's other parts you don't miss, but certainly the winning and the camaraderie and the teamwork and all the things that go with it, you definitely miss that.
Teamwork sure is an important part of footy, Rosie. Did you have any match day superstitions that you used to prepare for on the day of an AFL game?
Yeah, look, when I was a player, I was quite superstitious. And when I first started playing, all our games were on Saturday at 2:10. So I remember I'd go to bed every Friday night at the same time, and I'd get up every Saturday morning at the same time, and then I'd have 8 pieces of Vegemite on toast every single Saturday morning. Obviously, that changed a little bit, and I passed on a Friday night. So when games changed a bit, when I started to become a coach, the routine changed. But sitting on the same seat in the bus, was a lot of players are really superstitious around that. What you eat the night before the game, players are superstitious around that. What you eat the day of the game, players are superstitious around that. So most players and coaches have a lot of certain superstitions that they follow, and they try and do it religiously week in, week out.
Do you think those superstitions affected how you played?
I think it's more your own mind and just your preparation, getting your own preparation right and what you think works. So if you feel good about yourself and you feel good about your mind, and it's a bit about routine, players are very good at getting into a routine and sticking to a routine. And if you get thrown out of your routine, and that can sort of throw your game out. So I think it does help, because you just feel comfortable going into games and you feel like you've ticked all the boxes and you're ready to play.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Routines are really important. At the end of the 1990 season, you received a phone call when you were away and you nearly got traded to Collingwood. How did you take this?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was I was overseas and I got a phone call from a manager that they said, you need to take a 30% pay cut or they're going to trade you or cut you. And I was like, I was captain at the time. And yeah, it was a bit of a shock to get that phone call. And I didn't ever get a phone call from anyone at Fitzroy, which was really hard. I got a phone call from Collingwood, the coach, the football manager, the president at the time, and they basically said, look, we want you to come and play. This is the contract. We think we get done a deal with Fitzroy. And so I flew back to Australia. I was really disappointed in the club. I was disappointed in Fitzroy. And then come trade time, Collingwood couldn't get any of the Fitzroy players to go. Any of the Collingwood players to go to Fitzroy. And the trade didn't go through. So it was then me ringing the footy club. I still hadn't heard from anyone at the footy club, and I was extremely disappointed. I rang the club and I said, look, what do you want to do now? And they said, we're going to honour your contract. And I said, well, I'm heading back to the States. I said, that's fine. So I got back to America and I thought, well, if you don't want me as a player, you probably don't want me as captain. So I resigned the captaincy that year. And, it was a really tough period. I was really shocked by the footy club and the way they, responded to me as captain of the club. And, I stayed a number of years because the president at the time left and the new president came in, and he apologised and said, look, we want you to stay. And I lasted a few more years before I left to go to Sydney.
Yeah, that sounds like a really difficult time. How do you think, looking back at the Fitzroy and Brisbane merge, how do you think it has gone?
I think they've done the best they possibly could. I remember back in 1986, about 7 weeks to go before the season finished, we were told that Fitzroy was going to fold or we're going to relocate to Brisbane. So that was back in 86. And all the players voted to stay together. All the players voted we want to go to Brisbane together. And then a company, I think, called Hecron came in and bailed the club out. So ever since that time, it was really, really difficult. Club struggled for money. The VFL then didn't really get behind the footy club. So I think when the merge eventually happened, it was really the best case scenario that they could have come up with. And I think the way the club's done it, the way the Brisbane Lions have embraced it, which was the Brisbane Bears, I think they've really tried to do it, and they've tried the best they possibly could. And I know they've tried to embrace the old Fitzroy history, and I've been back to a number of different functions and been to the games. I remember going to the 201 grand final, and my great mate Lynch was playing, and I was working for Channel 7 at the time, and I was actually on the field when they won the premiership, and I went onto the ground, and then I walked back to the hotel, and all the Fitzroy people saying, Roosy, that's great, what a great day, and well done, and thanks for everything you did. So, look, it was sort of tough, and I know some people, Fitzroy people, find it really difficult, but as an ex-Fitzroy player, I think the Brisbane Lions have done an amazing job to embrace the history, and they've continued to do that over time, and I take my head off to them, and I think it's the best that they could have come up with under the circumstances.
Yeah, it's really good that they are continuing to embrace the history of Fitzroy. So who would have been the best player that you played with at either Fitzroy or Sydney, and why?
Yeah, probably the two best players I played with at Fitzroy were Bernie Quinlan and Gary Wilson. Look, Bernie won a Brownlow medal as a ruck rover and then went to full forward and kicked over 100 goals on a couple of occasions. I mean, he was just an exceptional athlete, but a great footballer as well, and really good person. Gary Wilson was a sort of 5'11" rover, and there was nothing he couldn't do. He could mark the ball, he could kick it, handball. He was tough, he was hard, he was fit, he was quick. He was just an exceptional player, and again, a great person. And then, I was fortunate to play with the great Tony Lockett when I went to Sydney, and Tony Lockett and Paul Kelly as well. So they're probably the top four players. I mean, Tony Lockett, he was obviously a great full forward, big and strong and tough, but his skill level was just elite. His ability to snap goals, and at training, just marvelled at his skills at training. And Paul Kelly, just his combination of speed, strength, stamina, toughness. He was an exceptional player as well. So they're probably the 4 best players I've got a chance to play with.
Yeah, they're all fantastic players. What was the biggest lesson that you learnt whilst you worked in the AFL industry?
I think that just the discipline and the teamwork, there's no doubt. I think anyone that's been involved at the AFL level and in a team sport, that just the teamwork, the camaraderie. And when you get a team like 2005 winning a premiership, with perhaps not the most talented team, but everyone working together and putting their egos aside, knowing their role, playing their role, working for each other. I think that's the greatest thing that I've learned out of sport. If you can get a group of footballers to do it, to be selfless and to help each other, anyone can do it, providing you put the effort in, you put the time in, you create standards, you create behaviours, and you have great leaders that are role models. I think that's the other thing. If you're a leader in any form of life, you have to be first and foremost a role model, and don't do anything you're not going to ask anyone else to do. And I think that's a big part of it as well. Yeah,
it definitely is. So what was it like to be the coach of the Sydney Swans when you broke the 72-year premiership drought in 2005?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was unbelievable. Probably the biggest thing was, the amount of effort that had gone into it, not just the people that we had in 2005, not just the players or, support staff of that year. The amount of people and time that went into it for 72 years. I mean, it was a huge build-up, the sacrifices the players made to leave, South Melbourne in the early 80s, and the amount of money that people put in the mid 80s, and, the private ownership. I think that was the thing that hit home. And to be the coach at that particular time, and to coach with a great bunch of coaches, to coach a great bunch of players, it was just incredible. So that, it was really an amazing experience, which I still look back on with fondness and still talk to those people that were involved, with great pride that they were part of it and we were part of it. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Would have it been the best success in your coaching career?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of different successes, and Melbourne, there's some really great successes there to come from such a low base. And, the year before I got to Melbourne, to win 2 games and then to finish in my last year winning 10, and, beating Hawthorn, the MCG, I think in the latter part of my last season was amazing. But, winning a premiership is just the ultimate success. But there's certainly been a lot of great successes along the way. And, some of the success we had at Melbourne in that time, and some of the development of the players and, the club and, the supporters, and seeing, even after I left, 2 years after I left, playing, Melbourne, watching them play in the finals 2 years ago was amazing, just to see the smiles on the face of the players and the fans and the supporters. So, been really fortunate to have a lot of great success and a lot of great memories from my time as coaching both Sydney and the Melbourne Football Club.
Yeah, you definitely had a fantastic coaching career. What would have been the hardest part of being an AFL coach?
I think the hardest part is probably the scrutiny, and probably the fact that as much as the media knows, is they never really know what's going on side of the footy club. So, and the media are the conduit between the club and the supporters. So when you get a media, that don't really understand everything that's going on and misreport so many things, that becomes the hardest thing, because, then the fans believe it, everyone believes it, and, it's actually not really true. So then it's just a distraction, and you've got to continually deal with those distractions and deal with things that are outside your control. And then, you bunker down inside your footy club. So that's probably the hardest thing, is just dealing with external, smokes and mirrors that aren't really true, and you just have to deal with them as best you possibly can and shield your club from it. And as a coach, you just got to deal with it as best you possibly can. Yeah,
so earlier this month, you had an interview with Triple M talking about how the media can better support senior coaches. Can you give us some insight into this?
Yeah, look, I've had a number of discussions with some media people. As you know, I've been in the media for a while, not doing anything this year. But to me, it's always a double-edged sword. It can't be one way. Yeah, you can't have the media just, terrorising someone like Ross Lyon and then expecting something in return. And I think the media at times have completely overstepped the mark, and then they expect something back from the footy clubs or the players. And it just doesn't, it can't work like that. If you work collectively together, and I think I said in that interview that coaches and players understand if we're played badly or coached badly, that's open slather. That's just part of what we do. But when you bring external things into it and you speculate on things that aren't true, and then all of a sudden you come back to the club and say, yeah, by the way, can we get Paul Roos to do an interview, or can we get Barry Hall to do an interview, or Nathan Jones? And then to wonder why the club doesn't really want to support the media. The reason they don't want to support the media is because they don't see the media supporting the club. Now, that's not to say the media doesn't play a role in holding clubs accountable, holding coaches accountable, holding players accountable. They absolutely do. But I think it is time where we need to come up with a collective set of behaviours and say, well, look, yeah, this is what the media's role is. And in return, this is what the players will provide, and this is what the clubs will provide. But at the moment, it's very blurred, and I think the media, certainly overstepped the mark in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, no, it is really important. Do you think that there needs to be a greater focus on coaches and players' mental health?
I think internally it is. I mean, the clubs are very, very good at looking after their players. Probably the Coaches Association now are starting to work that out for the coaches. And it's almost when the coaches leave the game. And I also think it's individual responsibility as well. I mean, I was a coach, and I took individual responsibility to meditate every day and to go for a run and to eat pretty healthy. So, you can't abdicate your own responsibility as a coach too. So, it's a complicated process, but there's individual responsibility, there's club responsibility, there's support mechanisms that are in place, but there's more that needs to be done. There's no question about that.
Yeah, that's really important. What would have been your favourite AFL game to commentate?
Probably the Richmond Giants prelim final. It was just amazing. And I think myself and Dermot and Jonathan Brown were doing it. And I remember at the end of the game, I had never been to a game, and it was a preliminary final. Obviously, it was a home game for Richmond, but the Giants not having as many supporters as Melbourne-based clubs, it was 95,000 Richmond supporters and 5,000 Giants supporters. And I remember all three of us had our mobile phones out after the game, and none of us had seen anything like it before, where basically the whole crowd was supporting one team, and the atmosphere was just extraordinary. So that was probably something that was really special to be a part of, sitting on that platform at the MCG on the pocket there down at one end and the city end, and the siren went, and then the Richmond supporters just going absolutely crazy. So it was sort of hard to go past that one.
Yeah, I'm guessing that this year, as we know, there probably won't be crowds at games. Do you think that will affect teams in the finals and just playing in general?
Yeah, I think you have to go back to round one, and I think we were all a bit shocked at how much the crowd meant to the game. And I remember saying to a lot of people that, the game looked like a practice game. It didn't look like a proper AFL game of football. And I guess that's that 10 or 15% of the energy levels that the crowd brings to the game, that brings the intensity of the tackling and the defensive side, and the ebbs and flows of the game. And it's going to be a different game. I think we know that from round one. We're not going to get the intensity that we've had in the past, and hopefully we get crowds back by finals time and grand finals time, because there's no doubt it's a different game, 100%, and it will have a major impact on, particularly when you're playing at interstate venues. I remember talking to the Melbourne players. They played at West Coast round one, and it was just completely different to when they played over there last year and the year before, and vice versa with other clubs. So it is going to have a massive impact, and it does detract from the games, no question.
Yeah, definitely will. Do you think that the AFL will implement canned crowd noise?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's probably not a bad idea, because For the players, it's so unique. It's so unusual to go. It is like a training. It's like a training drill, when you're playing in front of no one. So, I don't know whether it works with crowd noise or whatever, but certainly we do know without the crowds, the quality of the game is not as high as what it used to be. So, whatever you can do to deliver great product to the people watching at home, I'm sure the AFL and the clubs will try everything they possibly can to do it, to deliver a great product for the fans at home.
Yeah, the crowds are really important. Who do you think are the top 5 best players in the AFL currently?
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's so many. Look, Dusty Martin is a fantastic player. You look at Paddy Dangerfield, is an amazing player. I still think, someone like a Scotty Pendlebury is right up there in terms of how good he is. I love Stephen Cornelio. I think he's become an incredible player as well. And obviously Nate Fyfe for the Freo Dockers. So it's hard to sort of rank them. But, you've got some amazing players in the competition now. Bond and Pelly become a great player. You could list, 20 players to 30 players and throw a blanket over them because, there's so many good players running around the AFL at the moment.
Yeah, there are some fantastic players. How have you been spending your time away from working in the AFL industry?
Yeah, well, I was due to be going overseas sort of next week. So obviously part of stepping away, this is only my second year out of footy since I started in 1980. So, it was going to be pretty exciting not to be involved and to get over to Europe and spend 5 weeks over there and do some travelling and do some of the things that I haven't been able to do. So clearly with the virus, we haven't been able to do that. So, spending time at home. And I guess a lot for me is I love the leadership space and just observing leadership and leaders around the world, leaders in Australia, leaders of industry, leaders of countries, leaders of states, and really just observing a lot, looking after myself, doing a lot of meditation, doing some exercise, making sure I'm looking after myself and helping as many people as I possibly can and reaching out as much as I possibly can as well.
Yeah, that is really important to stay connected, but also look after your well-being. So do you think that, Paul, we will see a lot more injuries when football returns on June 11?
Yeah, I think so. I've been speaking to a lot of coaches and fitness staff over the last week, and I think that's the expectation. The expectation is that we'll see a lot of injuries, and certainly in the first 4 or 5 weeks. And I think players and clubs are preparing for that. Now, how you can prepare for it, I'm not sure, but I think it's just a case of making sure, your list is deep, everyone's ready to play. There's no doubt you're going to lose a lot of players through calf injuries, hamstring injuries, groin injuries, quad injuries, because you simply can't prepare for an AFL season with 4 weeks of training and certainly 2 weeks of contact work. It's just impossible to do it and expect players to turn up and be at the absolute best. So, a lot of it's going to be getting ready to play by playing. So round 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 are going to be really interesting. But you're going to watch a lot of players go down, a lot of players getting injured, and then younger players coming in and having to play their role. So teams that are well prepared, got deep lists, got experienced players ready to play are going to do well in the first, 6 to 8 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see how it unfolds. Do you think that the fact that AFL players aren't allowed to play in general, AFL players can't play in the state league competitions, do you think that will have an effect on the players that come into the AFL with the players that go out injured?
Oh, 100%. I was just with a couple of players, ex-teammates of mine, one still involved in the footy club. And, we just spoke about it then. It's going to have a huge effect, the inability of everyone to play every single week. How do you get those young players prepared? How do you pick a team when you get injuries? It has huge ramifications to the season. There's no question about it. The ability to develop players in lower levels and get them ready to play. And even longer term, you're going to have players that will get cut at the end of the year that won't have any football this year, which is so unfair on those particular players. So the season's going to be dramatically different, and really having no VFL, no feeder comps is going to have a huge effect on the competition.
Yeah, it really will. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time today. It has been fantastic to have you as a part of the Footy with Fletch podcast. All the best.
Thanks, mate. That was fantastic. Good on you.
So there we have it. The Footy with Fletch podcast, episode 3. It was fantastic to have the great Paul Roos on my podcast. He gave us a lot of insight into some of the big issues that are currently surrounding the AFL industry, but also talking about his early life, his playing career and coaching career. So it was great to have Roosie on the show. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of Footy with Fletch. I can't wait for episode 4. Bye for now.